let's have Pat Ford, please, and Ian Ridlin. Pat, you can go first when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pat Ford, and I am the general manager of an organization here in Rhode Island called the Coalition Radio Network. And while it may be considered unusual by some for a member of the independent media to testify, I would argue that my presence at over 100 city council and school meetings annually across the state of Rhode Island, from Westerly to Cumberland, gives me an unusual perspective on municipalities and their behavior. I rise in full support of this legislation. I applaud Representative Stewart's deep dive into the type of oversight that should be a normalized component of government management. Give an example of something the state has done well that's similar in spirit. A few years back, the state of Rhode Island enacted legislation requiring full disclosure of the borrowing costs, interest, and fees surrounding bond offerings at the state level. The impact has been profound. Transparency exists. We now have an informed electorate. The legislation has the potential to have this same type of impact with the harsh light of transparency. Some anecdotes. The city of Pawtucket holds regular meetings of a city council subcommittee called City Claims and Pending Suits. I am a regular attendee of these meetings. Last week, the city elders ruled over a pair of potholes and a fallen tree, yet gave no mention to the 3 impending lawsuits resulting from claims surrounding the alleged misbehavior of one Officer Daniel Dolan, recently found innocent of a police-involved shooting off duty, yet the subject of no less than 3 areas of civil litigation. And that's the ones that I know about. The town of Narragansett in 2022, in their most recent attempt to enact city ordinance about how many roommates you can have, a Superior Court judge ruled on Monday that stopped Narragansett from enforcing this controversial ordinance, limiting the number of college students that can live in rental housings. Notice a common denominator here. All of these cases involve Superior Court. This is not the jurisdiction of town traffic courts or, quiet meetings in back rooms. This involves sophisticated lawyering and the most expensive, the most important part of our legal system, literally bringing it to a grinding halt over a case that's already been decided 3 times. I can't tell you how many times I've had heroes from the American Civil Liberties Union appear on our little media effort to describe, and I'll add a little bit of sarcasm and humor, to, again, what we call municipalities and town councils gone wild. The town of Smithfield attempted to write their own medical cannabis laws.
Excuse me, Pat, just before you continue, and I love what you're doing, that's fine. If there's another instance where you're going to mention a specific person's name, I'd like you to omit the name.
Okay.
I appreciate
It's okay to mention the town, though?
Yes, that's fine.
Fair enough. All right, so the city of Smithfield, the town of Smithfield, decided that they were going to enforce their own medical cannabis laws. I don't know from what legal planet they came from. I'm sure in their minds it was well-intentioned. The town of Barrington, a school committee, apparently with the full support of their their school department solicitor, thought it would be ennobled to institute their own vaccination mandate, ultimately firing 3 teachers in their zealous pursuit of science. Regardless of how you feel about that, that's typically not the, if you will, the routine of a municipality. This case, by the way, is still mired again in Superior Court. And it appears that this time the defendants will prevail. Again, the potential cost to taxpayers being, countless thousands of dollars, I would imagine well into 6 figures. This same type of behavior, by the way, exists at the state level. State of Rhode Island has been in court for nearly a year and a half fighting a largely discredited mask mandate. Incredibly, the case is still in the discovery phase after a year and a half. The effective cost of state attorneys and their associated costs must be staggering. Of course, the taxpayers will never truly know, given the difficulties under our current opera system, in actually getting a response. The governor, by the way, recently instigated a jihad against the homeless here at the State House, with the governor hiring private counsel from the firm Adler, Pollock & Sheehan, clearly one of the most sophisticated law firms in this part of the country, probably with resulting fees. And again, we will probably never know, despite efforts by myself and other folks in the media to get them to disclose the true cost of doing so. As I said, at the Coalition Radio Network, we call this town councils and government gone wild, where either the egos of newly elected municipal or state leaders, flushed with their newfound power, become master of the universe, or in many cases simply attempt to fulfill wildly speculative campaign promises. It drives normally rational adults to rule on matters diverse, regardless of the advice often of their city solicitors or their own personal background. In the aggregate, this has cost Rhode Island taxpayers millions in legal fees, and while many cheer the pursuit, when the noise of the court cases fade away, it is in fact these same taxpayers left holding the bag. Or as the cartoon Pogo once stated, we have met the enemy and it is us. Finally, under generally accepted accounting principles and most SEC laws, private businesses are expected to account for liabilities. Under reserve accounting, an entity must make a reasonable projection of the potential cost of litigation, whether they be directing it or be the recipient of it. Government should follow these same dictates. Additionally, I would suggest that in addition to the cost of outside attorneys, a calculation should be made as the internal labor cost, as countless state and municipal lawyers, many of them often having private practices, can indulge in, again, countless amounts of money with virtually no accountability. It's only in the passage of this legislation that can lawmakers be held accountable for their behavior. Only then can voters truly judge every 2 to 4 years the efficacy, the honesty, the seriousness of the people that they elect as leaders. So I urge you to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Are there any questions for Pat from our committee? Okay.